Hey guys, so today I'm going to be making our final slime for slime week. This is an edible slime, the basis for which is fluff. You can use this brand if you want. You can use the Jet Puffed Marshmallow brand, or you can actually even take regular marshmallows and melt them down, which would require obviously some kind of parental supervision. Melt them down and use those in place of the fluff, but this is just quick and easy. So our recipe for edible slime: 1 cup of fluff or melted down marshmallow, 3/4 of a cup of cornstarch, which you're not going to add that in all at once, and 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. So into my bowl right now, I have my powdered sugar, my fluff, and 1/4 cup of the cornstarch to start. And I initially moved it around with a spoon to kind of get rid of some of the moisture that was in the fluff. So at this point, I can use my hand to mix them up and nothing really is sticking to my hand. So you start with only, like I said, 1/4 cup of that cornstarch. And after your fluff picks up all of the powder that's in the bowl, you can then add the remaining 1/2 cup of cornstarch kind of as you go, and you want to just keep it moving until it's picked that all up. So right now I'm going to add I'm actually just using my 1/4 cup as a scoop here in my cornstarch container, and I'm just going to add that 1/4 cup at a time. So I already had 1 in here. That was my second 1/4 cup. I have 1 more to go, and you can see that we have like a pretty pliable solid in here. There's still a whole bunch of powder in here. I did add some food coloring, but it doesn't seem to be, it's not being picked up quite yet. So I might add a little bit more of that as well. So I'm just going to keep this moving and add my last 1/4 cup. And after it's all mixed, I will be right back. Okay, so I ended up mixing this for about a total of 5 minutes. And honestly, about right after I added the second 1/4 cup of cornstarch, I noticed that the blue food coloring that I had put in wasn't being picked up by the dough. So what I did was I added about a teaspoon only of water, and that was just enough moisture to allow the blue food coloring to stick, or to sort of, it was stuck to the bottom, so that allowed it to dissolve into my mixture. And then I added the last 1/4 cup of cornstarch, and I actually probably added about another 2 tablespoons of cornstarch just to get rid of that excess moisture from the water that I added. So the final product is pretty nice. It's a nice, it's almost like a softer version of Play-Doh, but a little bit gooier than Play-Doh. This is definitely not something that's super sticky. As you can see, like, my hands are pretty clean playing with it. And it is completely edible, obviously, with the ingredients that it's made out of, so your kids can eat it while they're playing with it. I wouldn't recommend eating the whole thing in one sitting, but it's no different than candy or just marshmallows. Now, in a lot of the experiments that I do at home, or things that I do at home with slime, or I'm going to be doing a bath bomb video at some point, a lot of these call for cornstarch. And cornstarch is actually a pretty, we hear that it's added to our food, and it's viewed as not really a healthy thing, but it is kind of, it's a pretty unique material because it does a really nice job as a thickening or like a binding agent. So in this case, it took some of the stickiness out of this, and it's holding the dough together. As a thickening agent, it works best when it reaches about 95 degrees. And cornstarch is interesting because if it cools off too quickly, like if you were trying to use it for cooking as a thickening agent, if it cools off too quickly, it will actually, it's called weeping. So it'll go from being nice and thick to being like instantly thinned out if it's disturbed in a certain way, sort of like we saw with oobleck in that video, or if it cools off too quickly. As a thickening agent, like I said, it works best when it's warmed. And it actually functions like if you were to make a roux, it functions in the same way, exact same way as flour does, except it doesn't contain gluten like flour. So if you are somebody who has a gluten issue and you are, looking for, something calls for flour as a thickening agent, you can very easily substitute that out with cornstarch. Now, in addition to playing with this material, this is really cool, some extension activities that you might try are maybe trying different types of, obviously, fluff. Like, so you could try the different brands, or you could try melting the marshmallows down. You might actually also try different types of sugar. I obviously suspect it's going to work best with powdered, but you might try it with granulated sugar or brown sugar, something like that. And then I might actually even play with this in a way where, like, maybe make s'mores with it in the microwave, or just put a sample of it in the microwave and watch it do the expanding in the microwave thing. You might see if you can get it to dissolve. You might see what happens if you add additional cornstarch to it. You could even talk to your child about a mixture. Like, how do I know that this is, how do I know at what point this is a mixture? And how do I know at which point does this go from just being mixed together to having something happening chemically? So as I spoke before about this, the mixture would be when they're all kind of present in the bowl together, and they could still technically be separated. But here it would be very difficult to separate these, and clearly something has happened on the chemical level, the thickening from the cornstarch. Something has happened that allowed this to go from being just the contents in the bowl that were very different to this very, very combined, thick, sticky substance that we have now. You might also even just see what happens if you cool it off, what happens if you heat it up, and that kind of thing. One other thing that I'll mention when you're doing any of these activities at home, particularly the slime, I know that that's kind of, as a parent, kids are, want to make slime, and you're like, oh, it's gonna stink because it's messy or whatever. I really recommend getting a couple of those cheap dinner mats. I think they're like they're like silicone or plastic or whatever. Get a couple of those, or something that I do, and I can't remember if I mentioned this in my oobleck video or not, but I like to get the disposable tablecloths from like the dollar store. I buy a bunch of them at a rip, and if I'm going to do an activity or something with Boone that involves glue or cutting or slime or glitter or any paint, he loves to paint, things like that, I'll just throw one of those things on there. And when it's, when it gets kind of gross or a lot of crafts have been done on it or whatever, you just take it off and throw it out or recycle it or whatever. So I highly recommend doing that, especially because a lot of us are now teaching our children at home. We're doing a variety of science and art and other projects. It just might be, it's just a little tip, something that's been very useful to me. So enjoy. I hope that you like this one. This one's pretty fun. It's nice and pliable, and your kid will probably think it's tasty. I'm not gonna eat it because it's just not my thing. But enjoy, and if you do end up taking pictures or videos, please feel free to share them. Thanks, guys.